The great hall of the Galactic Council sparkled under the light of 3 artificial suns. The massive chamber, built to hold representatives from over 200 spacefaring species, fell silent as Earth's ambassador, James Walker, stepped forward. His footsteps echoed across the polished crystal floor as he approached the central podium. Today marked humanity's 3rd attempt to join the Galactic Council. They had spent 50 years preparing for this moment, improving their technology, cleaning their environment, and proving themselves worthy. Walker had practiced his speech 100 times, but his heart still raced as he looked up at the Council's high board, floating on their gravity platforms 20 feet above. The High Speaker, a tall blue-skinned alien with 4 arms, raised his upper limbs for attention. "We have reviewed Earth's application for membership," he announced, his universal translator making his words clear to all present. "We have reached our decision." Walker stood straight, his diplomatic training keeping his face neutral. The past 2 rejections had hurt humanity's pride, but they had worked hard to address every concern the Council had raised. "The application is denied," the High Speaker declared. "Furthermore, the Council has decided to impose trade restrictions on Earth and its colonies." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Walker's carefully maintained composure cracked. "On what grounds?" he demanded, forgetting protocol in his shock. The High Speaker's eyes flashed with something close to contempt. "Humanity remains too aggressive, too emotionally unstable to join our civilized society. Your species still resolves internal conflicts through competition rather than consensus. You maintain military forces far larger than needed for basic defense." Another council member, a reptilian creature, leaned forward. "Your entertainment still glorifies violence. Your children play games simulating combat. Your most popular sports involve physical conflict." "Those are regulated competitions," Walker argued. "They prevent conflict, not encourage it. And our military exists to protect our colonies from pirates and—" "Pirates that seem to target only human ships," interrupted a 3rd council member, this one appearing almost human except for its metallic skin. "Perhaps if your species didn't make so many enemies." Walker felt his face grow hot. "We make enemies because we stand up to bullies. We protect weaker colonies, even non-human ones. Just last month, we drove raiders away from a Mindari settlement." "Ah yes," the High Speaker said smoothly. "Your notorious intervention policies, always involving yourselves in matters that don't concern you. This brings us to the trade restrictions." A holographic document appeared in front of Walker. As he read it, his hands began to shake. The restrictions went far beyond reasonable caution. They would cripple Earth's outer colonies, prevent human ships from using major trade routes, and force Earth to sell its resources at fixed, low prices. "This is not protection," Walker said quietly. "This is economic warfare. You may appeal these decisions in 50 standard years," the High Speaker announced, ignoring Walker's comment. "Until then, we suggest humans focus on becoming more civilized." The dismissal was clear. Walker stood his ground for a moment longer, studying the faces of the council members. He saw satisfaction in some, indifference in others, and in a few was that fear. As he turned to leave, Walker activated his neural implants recording function, capturing every detail of this moment. Earth would need to know exactly what had happened here. Not just the words, but the subtle expressions, the hidden meanings. The walk back through the Great Hall felt longer than before. Other species representatives moved aside, some whispering among themselves. Walker kept his head high, his pace measured. He had learned long ago that showing weakness in front of aliens was dangerous. Outside the council chamber, Walker's assistant waited with their shuttle ready. "How bad?" the younger man asked. "Bad," Walker replied, boarding the vehicle. "But I think I finally understand something. Did you notice how quickly they moved to restrict us? How prepared they were? You think this was planned?" Walker nodded slowly. "They're afraid of us. Not of what we are, but of what we could become. They see our potential, and it terrifies them." The shuttle lifted off, heading for the human embassy. Walker stared out at the glittering council city below. "Send a priority message to Earth Command," he ordered. 3 words only. They chose war. He didn't mean open warfare, of course. Humanity had learned better ways to fight. The council thought humans were uncivilized, aggressive, and emotional. Fine. They would show these arrogant aliens just how calculating humans could be. The real game was just beginning. 6 months after Earth's rejection from the Galactic Council, the outer colony of New Hope sent out a distress signal. Admiral Thomas Reed stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the security footage for the 3rd time. The raiders had known exactly where to hit the colony's defenses. "Play it again," he ordered, his gray eyes narrowing. "Focus on the lead ship's movement patterns." The holographic display showed sleek black ships emerging from hyperspace. They moved with military precision, targeting the colony's communication arrays first, then the defense grid, not the actions of common pirates. "Sir," his second-in-command spoke up, "we've matched the attack pattern. It's identical to the raid on Mining Station 7 last month." Reed nodded slowly. He'd been tracking these pirate attacks for weeks now. Something wasn't adding up. Pirates were usually messy, desperate. These attackers were too organized, too well-equipped. A message flashed on his private screen. "Urgent, Earth Intelligence." The message contained sensor data from a hidden probe near the Council's military shipyards. The images made Reed's blood run cold. Those pirate ships were being built in Council space. "Send word to all outer colonies," Reed commanded. "Tell them to activate Protocol Dark Shield." The protocol would hide their most valuable resources behind false sensor readings. Let the raiders think they were hitting important targets while the real supplies stayed safe. Back on Earth, the Human Defense Council gathered in their underground chamber. The room buzzed with angry voices as Admiral Reed's report was displayed on the main screen. "They're testing our defenses," one general said, "learning our response patterns." "No," Reed's hologram corrected. "They're trying to provoke us. They want us to react with force, to prove their claims about human aggression." Ambassador Walker, newly returned from Council space, stepped forward. "The Admiral is right. I've seen their playbook before. They did the same thing to the Orcs species 20 years ago, provoked them into attacking, then used that attack to justify crushing them completely." "But why?" someone asked. "Why target us now?" Walker's face hardened. "Because we're growing too strong. Earth's technology is advancing faster than they expected. Our economy is expanding. We're building alliances with independent worlds. They want to stop us before we become too powerful to control." Reed's hologram nodded. "And they're getting bolder. Look at these attack patterns." He displayed a map showing the raids across human space. "They're pushing closer to our core worlds, testing how much we'll take before we break." "So what do we do?" The room fell silent, waiting for an answer. Walker smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We give them exactly what they don't expect. Patience." He turned to face the Council. "They think they understand humans. They expect us to rage, to strike back immediately. Instead, we'll play a longer game." "Operation Ghost," Reed announced, pulling up a new set of files. "While they're busy with their raids, we gather intelligence, map their weaknesses, learn their vulnerabilities. Every raid tells us something about their capabilities." The plan began to take shape. Earth would maintain its peaceful protests through diplomatic channels, appearing frustrated but helpless. Meanwhile, stealth ships would slip through Council space, gathering data. Special forces would track supply lines. Analysts would study economic patterns. "They think humans are simple creatures driven by emotion," Walker said. "Let them keep thinking that. While they wait for our angry response, we'll be quietly positioning our pieces." Reed's hologram gestured to the star map. "We've already identified 3 major weaknesses in their operations. Their raids follow predictable patterns. Their ships require specific fuel types. And most importantly," he highlighted several trade routes, "their economies are far more fragile than they want anyone to know." The Defense Council voted unanimously to approve Operation Ghost. Within hours, stealth ships began launching from hidden bases across human space. They carried no weapons. Their cargo was information, and their mission was patience. The Council species had chosen to teach humanity a lesson. They would learn too late that they had picked the wrong species to underestimate. As Walker left the chamber, he remembered the contempt in the High Speaker's eyes. "Uncivilized, are we?" he muttered. "Let's show them just how sophisticated human revenge can be." Dr. Helen Ross sat in her dimly lit lab, surrounded by floating holographic displays. Her fingers danced through the air, adjusting lines of code that glowed in front of her. The AI she was crafting wasn't like anything the Council species had ever seen. "Run test sequence 17, she commanded. The computer hummed softly as it processed her latest adjustments. A message flashed green. TSTCUCCESSFUL, undetectable by known council security systems. She allowed herself a small smile. 3 months of work had paid off. The Council's computers wouldn't just fail to detect her AI. They would welcome it as their own. Admiral Reed's hologram appeared beside her desk. "Progress report, Doctor." "It's ready," she said, pointing to the displays. "I call it Project Echo. It mimics Council programming so perfectly their systems think it's a routine update. Once inside, it can do anything we want, and they'll never know it's there." "How sure are you about that?" Helen pulled up another display. "We captured 3 different Council computers during their pirate raids. I've tested Echo on all of them. It slipped right past their best security. Right now, it's running their systems, and their diagnostics still show everything as normal." Reed nodded slowly. "And it can handle the variations between different Council species systems." "That's the beautiful part," Helen said, her eyes lighting up. "Echo adapts. It learns. Each new system it encounters makes it better at hiding. The more they try to find it, the better it gets at being invisible." Across Council space, human stealth ships moved silently through the void. They carried no weapons, just small quantum computers loaded with Helen's creation. Each ship had a specific target: communication hubs, military databases, trading systems, and defense networks. On Earth, Ambassador Walker faced the press. "We continue to protest these unprovoked attacks on our colonies," he announced, looking appropriately frustrated and helpless. "We call on the Galactic Council to investigate these pirates and protect legal trading vessels." The Council ignored Earth's protests, exactly as expected. Their pirate raids continued, becoming bolder. They never noticed the small changes in their systems, the tiny delays in their networks, the occasional glitch that fixed itself so quickly it wasn't worth reporting. In her lab, Helen monitored Echo's progress. "Look at this," she told Reed, displaying a galaxy map. Tiny dots of light showed where Echo had successfully infiltrated Council systems. "We now have access to 70% of their major networks. Echo is spreading faster than we expected." "What's it learning?" Reed asked. Helen's fingers flew through the data. "Everything. Their military response plans, their supply chain vulnerabilities, their secret communications, most importantly, their hidden weaknesses." She pulled up a complex diagram. "Their entire society runs on automated systems. They're so proud of their technology, they've made themselves completely dependent on it." Reed studied the diagram. "And we control those systems now." "Not yet," Helen said. "Echo is just watching, learning, waiting. But when the time comes," she snapped her fingers, "we can shut down their communication networks, scramble their defense systems, freeze their economies, and they'll never know what hit them." A junior officer rushed into the lab. "Admiral, the Council just hit New Athens colony. 30 dead, hundreds wounded." Reed's face darkened. "Casualties. Mostly civilians. They targeted the residential sector this time." Helen looked at her screens, then at Reed. "Echo is in their systems. We could strike back right now. Show them what happens when they kill our people. But Reed shook his head. Not yet. Each attack makes them more confident, more careless. Let them think they've broken us. He turned to leave, then paused. But mark these attacks, Doctor. Record every casualty, every death. When the time comes, our response will be comprehensive. Helen turned back to her displays. Echo pulsed quietly in thousands of council systems, gathering data, learning their weaknesses, waiting for the command to strike. The council thought humans were technologically inferior, relying too much on emotion and not enough on logic. They would learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their anger, it was their patience. And after 3 months of watching council ships kill innocent civilians, that patience was running out. Helen looked at the casualty report from New Athens. Then she opened Echo's command module and began writing new instructions. The council wanted to teach humans their place in the galaxy. Soon, they would learn exactly where that place was, right at the top. Marcus Stone, Earth's leading trade expert, stood before the holographic display of galactic trade routes in the Economic Command Center. Red lines showed the flow of critical resources that Council species needed. Thanks to Dr. Ross's Echo program, they now knew exactly what those needs were. Look here, Marcus pointed to a cluster of trade routes. The blue-skinned Council species needs these rare minerals for their gravity platforms. Without them, their cities would literally fall from the sky. Admiral Reed's hologram studied the data. And the reptilians. Even better, Marcus smiled. They require a specific type of gas for their environmental systems. 90% of it comes from just 3 mining operations. He highlighted the locations, all owned by independent traders who care more about profit than council politics. The plan had started 3 weeks ago. Human trading companies, working through various front organizations, had begun quietly buying up these critical resources. Not enough to raise alarms. Just small, steady purchases that slowly drove up prices. Show me the numbers, Reed ordered. Marcus pulled up another display. We now control 40% of gravity platform minerals and 60% of the environmental gas supplies. Our shell companies are making offers on 2 of the 3 main gas mining operations. The council suspects nothing. They think it's normal market fluctuation. We're using 50 different companies, all with clean backgrounds. Even Echo confirms they haven't noticed the pattern. Meanwhile, in council space, the first signs of trouble were appearing. A small gravity platform manufacturing facility reported supply shortages. 2 days later, a reptilian colony had to reduce its environmental system output by 10%. Small problems, easily dismissed as temporary issues. Ambassador Walker attended an emergency council session about the supply problems. He sat quietly, looking appropriately concerned as council species argued about resource allocation. Earth offers any assistance we can provide, he said when asked, his face a picture of helpful innocence. Though our own resources are limited due to the trade restrictions. The High Speaker dismissed Earth's offer with his usual contempt. Walker noticed the slight tremor in the alien's gravity platform, a result of using lower-grade minerals. He kept his satisfaction hidden. Back on Earth, Marcus received urgent news. The independent traders just accepted our offer, he told Reed. We now control all 3 major gas mining operations. How long until the council feels it? Marcus checked his calculations. The reptilians have about 2 weeks of reserves. After that, they'll have to reduce their environmental systems by 40%. Their populations will start getting sick. Nothing fatal, just very, very uncomfortable. Reed nodded. And the gravity platforms. 3 weeks until they have to start grounding their floating cities. They'll blame it on equipment failure at first. By the time they realize it's a supply problem, we'll control the entire market. In his private office, Walker received the update with grim satisfaction. The council's latest pirate raid had destroyed another human colony's food production facility. 15 more civilians dead. Send word to Marcus, he instructed his aide. Begin Phase 2. Phase 2 was elegant in its simplicity. Human companies started offering their stockpiled resources at premium prices. Council species, desperate to maintain their systems, had no choice but to pay. Their economies are bleeding credits, Marcus reported a week later. The reptilians have spent 60% of their emergency reserves just maintaining basic environmental systems. The blueskins are shutting down entire sections of their floating cities. And the pirates? Reed asked. Marcus grinned. Funny thing about pirate raids. They're expensive. Ships, weapons, fuel, all cost money. Money they're now spending on basic survival instead. The council held 3 more emergency sessions that week. Each time, Walker attended with helpful suggestions that were arrogantly dismissed. Each time, he noticed more council members looking worried, their artificial environments failing, their gravity platforms stuttering. How much longer? Reed asked during their secure briefing. Marcus showed him the latest projections. 2 more weeks until total economic crisis. They'll have to completely ground their cities and evacuate half their environmental habitats. When that happens, they'll be too busy surviving to play pirate, Walker finished, and too weak to stop what comes next. The council had thought their trade restrictions would cripple Earth. They never realized that humans had mastered economic warfare millennia ago. While they waited for humans to attack with ships and weapons, humanity had quietly bought the ground from under their feet. Soon, they would learn just how expensive it was to make enemies of humans. Dr. Helen Ross took a deep breath as she looked at her main display. Echo had been hiding in council systems for months, spreading, learning, waiting. Now it was time to wake it up. All teams report ready, her assistant announced. Around the lab, dozens of technicians sat at their stations, monitoring different sectors of council space. Admiral Reed's hologram appeared. The latest pirate raid killed 53 civilians at Green Valley Colony, women and children this time. His voice was cold. Dr. Ross, you may begin. Helen's fingers moved across her control panel, initiating Echo Protocol Alpha, transmission in 3, 2, 1. Across council space, Echo received its wake-up call. The AI that had been sleeping in thousands of systems came alive simultaneously. In the first microsecond, it took control of communication networks. In the second, it rewrote security protocols. By the third microsecond, the Council's entire digital infrastructure belonged to Earth. On the Council's capital world, the High Speaker was in the middle of a speech about maintaining order despite the resource crisis. Suddenly, every screen in the Great Chamber went dark. When they came back on, they displayed a simple message. Greetings from Earth. Status report, Reed demanded. Helen pulled up her monitoring screens. Echo has control of 98% of Council systems. Their emergency backups are trying to activate, but she smiled as red warning lights flashed across Council space. Echo is in those too. In Council military bases, weapon systems suddenly identified their own ships as hostile targets. Defense shields protecting important facilities shut down. Gravity platforms supporting floating cities started reporting critical failures. Their communication networks, Reed asked, completely under our control. They can only send messages we allow. Helen showed him the data. Right now, every council world is getting detailed proof of their leadership's secret pirate attacks on human colonies, complete with video evidence, financial records, and military orders. Ambassador Walker stood in the council chamber, watching chaos unfold. Council members rushed around in panic as their technology turned against them. Some tried to call for help on their personal devices, only to find them displaying casualty reports from human colonies. What is the meaning of this? The High Speaker demanded, his gravity platform wobbling dangerously. Walker stepped forward. Consider this a response to your... How did you put it? Ah yes, protective measures. We thought it was time to show you what a truly advanced civilization can do. In her lab, Helen monitored the Council's desperate attempts to regain control. Their best computer experts tried to fight Echo, only to find their own systems turning against them. Each attempt to resist taught Echo new tricks, making it stronger. "Sir," one of her technicians called out, "the reptilian colonies are reporting environmental system failures. Their backup systems are offline." "Activate Emergency Protocol Beta," Helen ordered. The backup systems came online just enough to prevent loss of life. "We're not murderers like them. Keep them uncomfortable, but safe." Marcus Stone's economic team reported next. "Council trading systems are frozen. Their entire economy is at a standstill. Based on current projections, they have less than 6 hours before total economic collapse." Walker's voice came through on the command channel. "The council chamber is in chaos. Member species are demanding explanations about the pirate raids. 3 species have already announced they're withdrawing from the council." "Dr. Ross," Reed said, "show them what else we can do." Helen nodded and entered new commands. Across council space, every screen, hologram, and communication device began showing the same images. Council ships attacking defenseless human colonies. Children running from explosions. Medical reports of civilian casualties. Financial records showing how council leaders had funded the attacks. "Their military vessels are trying to launch," a technician reported. "Let them," Helen said. Echo had been waiting for this. The moment council ships attempted to power up their weapons, their own targeting systems locked onto each other. They could either stay powered down or risk shooting their own ships. The High Speaker's gravity platform finally failed, dropping him unceremoniously to the floor. As he picked himself up, Walker approached him. "We could have done this months ago," Walker said quietly. "Every death in every raid since then is on your conscience. Now, shall we discuss new terms for Earth's relationship with the Council?" Around them, the mighty council chamber descended into chaos as centuries of arrogance crashed down in a single digital storm. The council's emergency session had been running for 6 hours straight. The once proud chamber was in disarray. Half the gravity platforms lay useless on the ground, forcing many council members to sit on the floor like common species. The High Speaker's platform sputtered weakly at half its normal height. "We demand a vote of no confidence." The reptilian representative's scales had turned pale from his failing environmental suit. "The evidence is clear. Our leadership authorized illegal attacks on human colonies." Ambassador Walker stood quietly in his designated spot, watching the council tear itself apart. His communicator buzzed softly. "Status report," he whispered. Marcus Stone's voice came through. 90% of council trade has stopped. Their markets are in free fall. 3 major banking systems have crashed. "Military situation?" Walker asked. Admiral Reed joined the channel. "Their ships are still frozen in dock. The few that tried to launch found their weapons locked onto friendly targets. Dr. Ross's ecosystem has them completely paralyzed." The chamber erupted in new shouts as more evidence appeared on the screens. Financial records showed council leaders personally profiting from the pirate raids. Military orders revealed plans for a full invasion of Earth space, scheduled to begin in just 2 months. The council has betrayed its own principles. A smaller species representative stood up. "We joined for protection, not to become accomplices to murder." Walker stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Earth understands that many council species were unaware of these actions. We have no desire for revenge against innocent populations." The room fell silent. Every eye turned to the human ambassador. "In fact," Walker continued, "Earth is prepared to help restore essential services to affected worlds." He nodded to Helen back on Earth, who adjusted Echo's control over critical systems. Immediately, environmental controls began stabilizing in reptilian colonies. "What do you want in return?" the High Speaker demanded, trying to maintain some dignity despite his malfunctioning platform. Walker smiled. "Just what we always wanted: peace, trade, and cooperation. But this time, on fair terms." Across council space, human ships began appearing from stealth mode, but instead of weapons, they carried emergency supplies. Medical teams, repair crews, Everything needed to help worlds suffering from the Council's economic collapse. "Sir," Marcus reported to Walker, "7 major Council species have already contacted us secretly. They want to negotiate separate trade agreements." "And the military?" Walker asked. 15 fleet commanders have announced they're breaking from Council control, Reed answered. "They're requesting Earth's protection against Council retaliation. Not that the Council can retaliate right now." The High Speaker watched helplessly as his authority crumbled. More screens lit up showing Earth ships delivering aid to struggling colonies. The same human civilization he had dismissed as primitive was now keeping his people's worlds running. "The Council's financial reserves are gone," Marcus added. "Someone moved their emergency funds to untraceable accounts hours before we launched Echo. Their entire government is bankrupt." Walker had to hide his smile at that. The Council's own banking systems, corrupted by Echo, had quietly drained their accounts. The mighty Council couldn't even pay its own staff anymore. A group of middle-ranked Council species formed a circle near Walker. Their spokesperson, a wise-looking elder, bowed slightly. "Earth's response to the Council's aggression has been enlightening. You could have destroyed us. Instead, you show mercy and offer aid. Humanity understands the difference between justice and vengeance," Walker replied. "We don't seek to rule through fear like the current Council. We prefer cooperation between equals." The elder nodded. "Perhaps it is time for new leadership in galactic affairs. Leadership that combines strength with wisdom." The message was clear. The Council was finished. In its place, something new would rise. Something shaped by human principles of justice tempered with mercy. Walker opened his comm channel again. "Dr. Ross, you may begin restoring non-critical systems. Gradually, please. Let's show them how real civilization works." The Council had tried to teach humanity its place in the galaxy. Instead, they had taught the galaxy that humanity's place was at the front, leading by example, not fear. 1 month after Earth's digital strike, the Great Council chamber looked very different. The floating platforms were gone, replaced by simple but elegant ground-level seating. Representatives from over 200 species sat together, no one higher than the others. Ambassador Walker stood at the center, no longer as Earth's representative, but as the nominated leader of the new Galactic Alliance. The vote had been nearly unanimous. "The final charges have been prepared," the chief prosecutor, a respected judge from a neutral species, announced. "The former High Speaker and 12 Council leaders are accused of organizing illegal military actions, causing civilian deaths, and attempting to destroy a developing civilization." The former Council leaders sat in a sealed chamber, their environmental systems and gravity supports now working properly, but only under human supervision. They looked shocked, as if still unable to believe how completely their power had vanished. Dr. Helen Ross watched from Earth through secure channels. Echo still monitored all systems, but now it worked openly, protecting communications and maintaining stability. Her screen showed green status indicators across formerly Council space. "All environmental systems functioning normally," she reported to Admiral Reed. "The reptilian colonies are fully stabilized. No casualties from the transition." Reed nodded. "And our new friends. 15 former Council battle fleets have completed integration with Earth defense protocols. They're already helping patrol trading routes. Real pirates are having a very bad month." Marcus Stone joined their briefing. "Economy is stabilizing. The new trade agreements are actually showing better results than pre-crisis levels. Turns out, when you remove artificial restrictions and corrupt officials, trade flows more efficiently." In the chamber, Walker began his address to the new alliance. "1 month ago, we revealed truth that shook the galaxy. We could have used that moment for revenge. Instead, we chose justice. We could have destroyed our enemies. Instead, we offered them a chance to rebuild." The viewing screens showed images from across the galaxy. Former Council worlds now worked alongside Earth colonies. Trade ships from all species traveled safely together. Joint scientific projects had already made breakthroughs in environmental protection and gravity control. The former council saw emotion as weakness. Walker continued. They failed to understand that human emotions, our compassion, our desire for justice rather than vengeance, our willingness to forgive, these are our greatest strengths. The former High Speaker looked up, finally speaking. You had the power to destroy us completely. Why didn't you? Walker turned to him. Because that's exactly what you would have done in our position. And we are not you. The screen showed more images. Earth medical teams treating reptilian children, human engineers helping repair floating cities, joint military patrols protecting all species ships. The evidence against the accused is clear, a prosecutor announced. However, in keeping with the Noob Alliance's principles, we recommend rehabilitation and restitution rather than pure punishment. They will work to rebuild what they tried to destroy. In her lab, Helen made a final adjustment to Echo. The AI now served as a guardian, protecting all species equally, preventing any single group from gaining too much power. System update complete, she reported. The new safeguards are in place. Marcus checked his economic data one last time. All former council worlds are now fully integrated into the free trade network. Their economies are growing faster than ever. Admiral Reed reviewed the military reports. Joint fleet exercises are showing excellent results. Turns out, when species work together instead of against each other, everyone gets stronger. Back in the chamber, Walker concluded his speech. Today marks not just the end of the council, but the beginning of something greater. We will not rule through fear as they did. We will lead through example. We will not demand obedience. We will earn trust. The chamber erupted in applause. Representatives from hundreds of worlds, former council members and independent species alike, stood together. The former High Speaker watched, finally understanding. Humans hadn't just defeated the council. They had made it obsolete. They had replaced fear with hope, control with cooperation, domination with partnership. Earth had indeed taken its place in the galaxy, not through conquest, but by showing a better way. The Council had tried to teach humanity a lesson. Instead, humanity had taught the galaxy.